Hello everyone and welcome back to Expletives Included for our 7th day of Vlogmas. As I said before, last time I talked about regular films, live action films, and this week I'm going to be talking about animated films. As I said, animated films are kind of what I seem to be watching more often at the moment. So for this one, I suppose it was maybe a bit easier, but then also a bit more difficult to kind of choose what selection of films to talk about. I don't have the props this week. Most animated films that I watch, I tend to watch them online rather than like having the actual DVDs. I'm not sure why that's happened. It just kind of has. I've got plenty of anime DVDs, but kind of wanted to just talk about Western animation, I guess. Kier has kind of said that he thinks that I should just do them all as one because the lines are kind of blurred and it's just kind of falls under the category of animation more or less. I'm sure Connor would disagree, but I've decided just to talk about Western animation anyway. So starting off, just starting off. As you know, I'm a big fan of folklore. I keep repeating myself. And two films that I'm going to kind of group together are The Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea. There's a small kind of Irish production company that produced both, and they're kind of working together with, I think, like a French animation studio, is I think the term. And it kind of does rely heavily on kind of Irish folklore and Irish tales. So the first one, Secret of Kells, is kind of about this kind of cut-off Christian society that are not under siege, but there's like this imminent threat of kind of a Northman invasion, and it's kind of these people living this situation, and kind of the main theme is just kind of like the survival of the culture, the survival of the people, and it's kind of these two personalities clashing and this young boy kind of caught in the middle. And there's like the two ideas. The person who's kind of like in charge of the town kind of is saying that we need these big walls, we need solid walls to protect ourselves, to keep these invaders out. And there's another man who kind of enters this society, who kind of knows them from elsewhere. It's kind of quite old, but he knows everyone because he's well travelled. He's kind of recently come from a settlement that has been raided by these invaders, and he says, no, walls aren't going to keep these people out. What we need is to kind of, well, he's an illuminator. He wants to kind of note down, kind of keep texts, and kind of keep this tradition alive, and kind of have things that will survive, will be passed down, and just kind of keep culture alive that way. And as I said, this young boy is caught in the middle, and he's not supposed to go out, but he does, and he kind of befriends this forest spirit, this fairy, and she kind of helps him on kind of various different things, and it kind of all comes together, and it's all kind of very interesting, and I would say it's well worth the watch. It's parts of the animation do seem a bit kind of lacking, but there is kind of a lot of heart there, and it's all kind of very visually interesting, but it's not kind of like a masterpiece of artwork, although maybe I would say no, I wouldn't, but I'm sure that it's won awards, and it's great, and it's definitely worth the watch. Song of the Sea is kind of their film, their sequel, not their sequel, but it's like the second piece, their second film that they've produced, and it's kind of set in modern day, and it's kind of more relating to Selkie myth. So it's basically two children, one who is just kind of human boy, and his sister who is half Selkie. Not sure why, just because the mother was the Selkie, and maybe it just kind of suggests that Selkies are all women, which I'm not sure why they chose that, but it kind of makes sense, and the story wouldn't work otherwise. Um, and it's kind of like a journey. They're kind of taken away from home to kind of live with their grandmother or aunt or other relative, and they kind of run away from this and try to get back home. And along the way, they kind of get separated. They kind of uncover this world of fairies, and kind of the sisters' kind of true identity is revealed, and it's kind of all of this mystery and wonder is stumbled upon, it's learned, it's doing a bad job again, but it's all kind of wonderful. I think everything has kind of stepped up. The animation has stepped up, the feels have stepped up, the story has stepped up, and as I said, I've just been singing the praises of this one production that they've done, and I'm just saying that this one is just so much more. It's in kind of pretty much every situation. It's just a great film, and if you were to kind of just watch one, then I would definitely suggest Song of the Sea. But of course, I would suggest both. But if you had to see one, Song of the Sea, and again, I would say watch Secret of Kells first, because Song of the Sea is just kind of so much better. It would kind of seem, I think that if you watched that one first and then watched Secret of Kells, then it would kind of seem just kind of a bit lacking, possibly. Maybe you would disagree, but that's kind of what I would suggest. So that's kind of like English, British animation. It's mostly in Ireland. My throat is still kind of very sore. I'm still kind of recovering from this cold, so water on hand. Moving on to something from America, The Last Unicorn. Probably the last film that I've watched recently, and I just enjoy it so much, partly just because of my love of unicorns, but also it's kind of got everything. It's got wizardry, unicorns, like a world that's infused with magic, a kind of tyrannical despot and king they live in his castle for a time, and it's just such an amazing world, and it's such an amazing story, and the characters are all really likable. Smendrick, of course, the most likable, but then Prince Lear, who is voiced by Jeff Bridges, so how can you not like him? And then there's King. That's embarrassing. The King Haggard, is voiced by Sir Christopher Lee. So, just even though he's just kind of so awful, and I'm not sure if he's sympathetic, but he's kind of very, I guess, kind of pitiable. And it's just the fact that he's voiced by Christopher Lee, it's just his voice. It's just so amazing. And if you've never seen it, then just why? I think there are like quite a few detractors, and there are kind of aspects of the film that maybe are a bit weird. There's just like, there are a few bits that seem out of place. It's kind of I think it was kind of designed as like a children's film. I think like The Last Unicorn was supposed to be a children's book. I think the creator, Peter S. Beagle, I think the idea was that, I haven't read it, but it was a while ago. The story started off as just like a story that he read to his kids, or not read to his kids, but kind of told them and kind of crafted. And I think I might be getting entirely the wrong end of the stick. I can't remember. But it is such like an amazing world of wonderment and fantasy, and that's probably like a theme, I think. Well, it's a theme that kind of carries on from the films that I've mentioned the other day, but with animation, there's no limit to like the imagination that you can pour in. Like, there's no limit to like the world that you can create. You can be as fantastical as you want. There's no kind of limitations. The only limitation is imagination, which is boundless. And I think I just kind of love everything about. Well, I say I love everything. The parts of the singing in The Last Unicorn. But, overall it's just like an amazing film, and like with the other films that I was talking about the other day, just I could watch it again and again and again. And it has kind of got to the point where kind of a couple of times I've just kind of like had it on in the background and I've kind of know it so well that I've just kind of just only been half watching it. And then like the last time I watched it, I did kind of like, I was like properly invested, and I just remember just kind of thinking, it's like, I forgot how beautiful this is. I forgot like how great this animation is. I forgot this like scene where just Haggard is, I don't want to say anything, but he's just kind of reveling, like saying, I knew it, and all of these other things are happening at the same time, and it's just an amazing scene. And just kind of like the philosophical kind of parts of it where they kind of talk about like the nature of things, and etc etc. It's such a great film, and I think depending on, it's like one of those films, like depending on your age, depending on your outlook, depending on your kind of state of mind, you can kind of watch it, and depending on who you are, you can get like a very different story out of it, and you can watch it in like a number of different ways. And it I don't want to say like you kind of see something new like every time you watch it, but it's can be kind of like a very different experience for different people, and I think that's like a really amazing, that's like a really great part of it. Coming up to like 12 minutes, so what else? Pixar, how can you kind of not love Pixar? And I think just Disney, before Disney, Pixar, because they're kind of the same thing now. Essentially, Tangled is what I want to talk about next, which again, another fantasy, swashbuckling adventure. Again, it's maybe not like the greatest film in the world, but it's just so much fun, and that's kind of like, I suppose, where I come from with like all films. It's fun to watch, and the characters are fun, and Tangled is kind of more child friendly, I guess. So it's a lot lighter, and I think because I often complain like a lot with like modern media, everything is really, it feels like really dark. Everything that's kind of tried to be aimed towards me is really dark. But then there are just like these light-hearted, fun things that I enjoy watching. So it's because films are in essence escapism, and I think that's why animation, as I said, lends itself so well to that kind of to that aspect of media, just the escapism aspect, because there are no limits. And just with Tangled, it doesn't kind of like push all of these boundaries with the fantastical realms, but it's still like this amazing kingdom and these kind of really fun character designs. And it's, above all else, why I kind of really enjoy Tangled is just that it's so funny, and not just fun, it's funny. There are jokes which just kind of never fail to get a laugh. I just always love it when Flynn is sword fighting with Maximus, the horse, but Maximus is the only one with a sword because Flynn has a frying pan, and it's just like the lunacy, the weirdness of that situation. It's just impossible not to watch that and just have fun. And just like when he like says the line, "I'll have you know, this is the strangest thing I've ever done," and you believe that, and I just love. It doesn't take itself seriously, and I just love that. And I suppose what else to say about it? There are again like aspects that I kind of that really do chafe, like the end bit, the end sequence just doesn't. Well, not the end sequence, like the epilogue, where they kind of talk about like what people did next. That kind of grates on me because I think that it just doesn't really fit. That's kind of no. It should have ended, but it kept on going. Maybe. it's just kind of like when it's saying like everyone's dreams came true, and I just thought no, that shouldn't have happened. And the fact that there's a mime as well, that's never good. Um, you never want mimes in any of your work. Anything else? I've talked about 4 films and I've gone on for a while. I'm going to call it a day there. Any honourable mentions that I should? I know I'm doing that thing where I'm rambling, but I'm thinking, is there anything else that I do think really should be spoken about? Um, uh, I suppose honourable mention, just Inside Out. It's kind of the more recent Pixar film, and I've really enjoyed it. And I laughed, I cried. It did seem to be a bit more serious than the likes of Tangled, and I suppose, um, well, yeah, it did get like very heavy at points, but I think that why I like that so much and why that was so great is because it wasn't dark. Because there was like all of this emotion here, and it does, as I said, it gets very heavy, and there's like very deep emotions, and it's maybe a bit even depressing and sad at times, but it's not kind of ooh, look at how dark and edgy we are. It's kind of pulling on all of these emotions without kind of relying on that, which I think does happen a lot. And as I said, that's why I really love these kind of light-hearted films, and why I like animation, and why I choose all of this fun stuff over the dark and gritty. So yes, just like some of my favourite animated films that I will watch again and again. I suppose another honourable mention, just the Equestria Girls films. Again, they're just fun and light-hearted and nice. I like just kind of watching things that are nice. Why wouldn't you? On that note, I'm going to call it a day. Thank you for watching again. This is just a little bit more of me, and I'll see you again in another couple of days.